Hey guys and girls, Bored now, back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about From Season 2, Episode 3. The episode is called Tether. Full spoilers from the start of this review. So this one, I think after a dramatic first couple of episodes, feels a little bit more of a filler episode where we're just kind of jumping about the various characters, and it picks up the pieces where Boyd is now back in town along with Tabitha. She's in town, so she reunites with her family, so there's stuff with them, and it definitely feels like a little bit more of a filler episode with just some stuff being planted here and there. And as filler episodes go, I think it's pretty solid. One thing I want to pick up on, though, is this sense that the trip into the woods for Boyd and also, I guess, for Tabitha and Victor, their little journey. I'm not sure in the end it amounted to that much. Just the fact that they've returned to town like this and they've discovered certain things, especially Tabitha. I mean, Boyd is still trying to figure out what exactly happened with him in the woods, and at one point he's trying to explain it to Ellis, who is being a bit of a little bitch, as he tends to be, and this definitely sells me on the fact that Ellis has got to go, but I sense he may be around a little while longer, which is annoying, because at the end of this one of the things that happens later on is then him and Fatima, you can do much better, but she agrees that they will get married sooner rather than later, because they were engaged, but they said, we've got to wait a while, and that was at a point where Boyd was still in the woods, but they do have a moment where they decide, strike when the iron's hot. So it seems like their wedding could be quite imminent, but Ellis again was quite annoying and whiny in that scene with Boyd where he was trying to explain stuff to him and what exactly went on, even though he was struggling. But yeah, I think what I would say about this episode is that as a filler episode it feels pretty solid. The main standout plot, which I think is quite well done, is this stuff with the girl Kelly, who was the one in the young couple with this guy Brian. And one of the things we left off on at the end of the last episode was then you could hear the creatures outside and they were trying to encourage Brian to open the door, and he just seemed to think that they were people in trouble, so you could see him heading towards the door, whereas Kelly was more cautious and saying, maybe no, don't do that, just in case you don't know who these people are. So the big thing with her in this episode is that Ellis and Kenny at one point find her with a spike in her head and stuck to the tree, pretty much the thing keeping her tied to or pinned to the tree. I was looking for the right term. And they come upon her because they hear I think it must be her iPod or her music at some point, and they find her and she just appears to be dead, but then it turns out that she isn't. She comes out of it, wakes up out of nowhere, and what it amounts to is that she's on the verge of dying, but she's still alive, but in critical condition. And Kenny goes and gets Kirsty, and there's a little bit of a moment that love triangle for the first time bothered me a little bit, because there's a little bit of a moment because she's with Mariella at the time. But anyway, Kenny goes to get her because they need her to see to the girl, to Kelly. And that becomes a big thing in the episode where Christy is there helping her. And they just realise that the situation is really grim and that they probably can't save her, because Christy's Well, you know, even if we got her to a hospital, even in a hospital, it would be like an operation that would take hours and hours. So, with the resources we've got here, we've probably got no chance of saving her. And the reality is she's going to die. So, it's just about making her as comfortable as possible. And this stuff I really enjoyed because once again it's characters having to figure stuff out, it's characters having to work together to try and make this girl as comfortable as possible. Once again, I do like Christy is one of my favourite characters, and it's because of scenes like this. I like them. She is honest to the girl when she talks to her at one point. She's honest about you're gonna die, but she's also very comforting, like as comforting as you can be, and it is just there for her in like a truly honest way and just tends to her. And she's also a very like morally tough person, where she says to them at one point, because they're talking about the creatures are going to come back at some point and get her, and they're talking about the best ways to like pull the spike out, but try and do it as like sensitively as possible. And at one point Ellis suggests, well, there is another way, and he's hinting, just do the humane thing, like make it quick, like kind of kill that, just shoot her and or whatever. But like Christy is very like determined that no, we're not going to do that, we're not going to have her go out that way. And like there's definitely an argument then that would be like the humane way to do it, but it's sort of this weird thing where the girl Kelly for a long time is actually comfortable, like she's not feeling that much pain, but like Christy says, I can't say how long that'll last. And this stuff once again gets really dark because Kelly says at one point what happened that the previous night the creatures got her boyfriend Brian, and that she was made to watch what they did to him. So that side is really dark, and yeah, it just comes down to them being with her and making her as comfortable as possible. Another nice little touch is when Kelly wants to ring her mother, and Christy says, well, we don't get great cell phone reception here, you probably won't be able to. But she says, you can write her a note if you want, like if you tell us what you want to say, we can write it for you. And this is one of those like nice little white lies from Christy, because she's kind of like making it sound like if we'll write the note for you and make sure you get it to the mother, and because of the way this town is, there's no real chance of that. But it's a good character beat, because not only is it a white lie which does no harm, but also it's a way to comfort the person at this like terrible time. And I mean, ultimately it doesn't come to that. Like things escalate, and Kelly starts feeling like really sudden shocking pain. She starts screaming. That gets the attention of Boyd, who comes along. And once again, I think like Christy is a real trooper in the scene, because at one point Boyd is saying, like, you don't have to be here, Christy, I will just do the tough stuff. And she's like, no, there's no way I'm leaving. And she's there still till the end, where Boyd is the one to pull out the spike. And such a gut-wrenching scene. Like, me and my mum were looking away, but just the way it's done, with like this really slow, agonising moment of him pulling out the spike, and you can hear the sound of it, and just, yeah, the whole way it's done. And it's actually done off camera, like it kind of cuts to a side kind of shot where you just see him doing it, but you don't actually see the spike being pulled out. But somehow, like, just that direction choice made it all the more like agonizing for us to watch, for us to experience. So that stuff I thought was really good stuff because of the way it involved the characters, and once again it's just another sadistic side to these creatures and some of the things they will do. And later on, Christy goes home or goes to Mariana and just cries in her arms, and that's sort of fair enough. Like, you see that she's still feeling very torn, but also quite close to her. It's telling that she goes to her in such a moment. And Kenny, once again, is feeling a bit of a loose wheel. One of the things that it's the end of the episode, is then he comes across Sarah, because we've been wondering where Sarah is, and like, he finds her at the end of the episode, like, down in a cellar somewhere. So that's going to be something that we pick up in. But I would say the stuff with Kelly was probably the best stuff in the episode. Now, there's this weird sort of thing with Boyd, because at one point he tells Donna that when he was in the war years ago, which I don't think we knew about, because we knew his wife was at war, but I kind of got the impression that Boyd wasn't, but according to this story he was. And he tells this really harrowing story about how he had like a young guy die in his arms because there was like some sort of an explosion, and like he randomly went over some kind of landmine or something similar to that, and like Boyd was there but couldn't save him, and he died in his arms. And he's making a parallel between that and like Kelly today dying with him right there as he like pulled out the spike. But he does this weird cryptic thing where he says the name of the guy who died in his arms, and he says that it was like something Bryant, like it was whatever, like Cadet Bryant or Colonel Bryant or whatever the name was, whatever the rank was, but the last thing was Bryant. And he's making this link, which, I don't know, seems a bit sketchy to me, but he's just making this link to Donna where he's saying, well, this guy's, like, the name of Kelly's boyfriend was Brian, and then Brian sounds a bit like Brian. He's trying to make some sort of a link, and probably with the way this show is setting certain things up and suggesting certain things, and I mean, a little bit like Lost, which it has a lot of parallels to, that there just seem like there's going to be some massive coincidence. I think Mariana coming into town is probably one of them because of the link with Christy, I should say. That's something Donna says. That's the first. Donna's still feeling the ill effects of Gungai. One entertaining scene that I did enjoy is like Boyd just putting that guy in his place, like the guy who had the gun on Kenny last episode, because like he's still giving shit to Donna. He does have a funny line, I'll say, because at one point she's like, "You're not listening to me," and his line is something like, "I am listening, I'm telling you to fuck off," which is pretty funny. But then Boyd comes along and he's like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm the sheriff," and it's like, "Oh, I thought the Asian guy was the sheriff, or the Korean guy," he might have said. But I just love, this is classic Boyd, where he's not going to take any shit, and he just puts this guy in his place, and he lays it all out. He says, "If you want a place to sleep, then you better shut the fuck up and listen to the lady." And the guy doesn't really have anything else to come back on with that. So that's good. That's a good scene. Just Boyd stepping up and putting this douchebag in his place. And there's bits and pieces with other characters, like, as I said, Jimmy's reconnected with his family, and Ethan wants to see Victor, but Tabitha is saying, no, we need to leave Victor alone for the time being. There's also this issue of their stuff, because they lost their stuff when the house collapsed. So one thing which is quite a fun little touch is then Kenny's mother, I think her name is Mrs. Lou, like a lot of people know her as Mrs. Lou, but Kenny's mother anyway. At one point Tabitha asks her, like, if they can maybe look at some stuff that she's got, because we've seen before that she has like this storage of all this stuff, and it dawned on me in this episode that it's because over the years, as you've had different people go through this town, it's stuff which has been left behind, or like because of, well, whatever reason has happened to these people. But it's, some of it is their stuff from like years ago, and there's a scene later on with Tabitha and Julie when they're like picking out a coat, and there's a fun, like, Julie's like, isn't this a little weird? And it's just like these random people's stuff, and I do like Tabitha's comeback about how, well, in a way it's no different than thrifting, which she's got a point. It's not that far off thrifting, so I did enjoy that exchange. But that's another like detail I quite like, this idea then, like, she just has this storage room with all this different stuff from down the years, down the generations. But like, when Tabitha asks Mrs. Lou about can we maybe look for some stuff in there, she's like, come and stay with me and Kenny, like, mothers help mothers. So that's a nice little scene, and it appears as though that's what they're going to do, at least for a while. Jimmy's still recovering from his wounds, like he's in the, like, well, medical facility, and there's a scene actually with Mariana and this older woman where they're like helping him, because Mariana has some training obviously. But yeah, I quite like this setup. Now, one thing which crossed my mind is then, as someone else, I think it's Julie brings it up, then Jade is living there as well. And sort of just thinking about the altercation with Jade and Julie at the end of season 1, one prediction I'm making now, and I could be off base, but one prediction I have now is that something's going to go down with Jade and Julie, because we've already had like them rubbing each other up the wrong way, Julie getting pissed with him because of how he was talking to her dad, and there, once again, Jade is this, they're kind of doing like a Sawyer type thing with him, and there's a little bit of, could there be some flirtation there, like he was actually quite, oh well, you like, you've got stones, or that kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure how old Julie's meant to be, or if she would be like too young for this guy, but it's just crossed my mind that either there could be something between them like that, or they could just have a bit of a back and forth where they're constantly like arguing with each other, like almost like, dare I say, Kay and Sawyer before they started becoming a thing. But it's just something that's crossed my mind. I can definitely see them clashing. That seems like an obvious plot sort of point. But one of the other big things is when Tabitha sees these two children who appear to her, so it appears to be a vision. And she then confesses to Julie a bit later about what happened in the past when Tommy died. And Julie immediately jumps to it could be Tommy, or one of these kids could be Tommy. And Tabitha seems pretty sure that then it is, and just says then it feels different, like the way they appear to her. But she has a couple of flashes in this episode, because she also has a flash. It's when Ethan is doing the building blocks, and it appears to her in the same way as this structure which she saw with Victor in the underground, and she just has a freak out moment there. And some of this stuff, I'm not sure if it's just meant to be that she's having these flashes and it's just bringing up trauma because it was naturally quite a traumatic night, or whether it's then there's actually some sort of link. There's obviously stuff going on with the children. It could just be then this is, again, maybe the creature's way of, I don't know, sort of playing on her like vulnerability and her past a little bit, having lost, I mean, being a mother, but also having lost a child. So that could be a thing. Whereas the building blocks thing just seems a bit more innocuous, where it could maybe just be that it's bringing back that memory. But this show does like to play with images like that, and does like to imply that everything is connected somehow, or there is a meaning to every little thing. So there's a good chance that there is something to it, but it was definitely played in that sort of way where it could just be then it was just a natural thing, and it was just bringing up a bad memory rather than there being like anything to it. So the other stuff I'll mention is probably just a little scene with Jade and Victor, because it turns out Jade, being a bit of an arsehole, took his stuff, including his violin, so we're treated to him doing some violin playing at one point, and Victor wants his stuff back, obviously storms in and takes it back, and Jade comes after him, and he's like, hey, I found this picture, you could hold the answer to getting us all home, and he tries to give him a pep talk, and Victor wants no part. He says, this isn't any of your business, stay away from me, and that's something that they're probably going to return to. So that's pretty much the episode. It's a pretty solid episode. Like, it's a little bit more of a filler episode probably than the first two, but it's actually not a bad thing that we've had a bit of a breather episode, because those first two episodes were quite frantic at times, and the stuff with Kelly out in the woods, I did think was very well done, and is the highlight of the episode, I thought. And like, I don't even mind now Sarah's back, because she's a character that tends to create pretty decent drama as well. So that's the episode 3 of season 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you've seen the episode, like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media. Keep watching TV. See you guys again soon. Goodbye.